Thanks, Iman, and thanks for the research team for such an effort. But there's something I would like to mention. You have mentioned a lot of scenarios, and then afterwards, you mentioned the fourth scenario, which is a presumptive one. So, if the money that that comes from the government, that comes to the government from reducing the subsidy, and took the money and pumped it, or took, which is a good scenario, and put it into education and health and infrastructure, if this happened, these things will happen. So the positive things that you have mentioned will be related to it, because otherwise the people will not think that the nouveau poor are not here, but the idea of the middle income class who are affected, and whether we see it in the right way or not, this is very important. And who also wants to start from the discussants? So Dr. Magued, please start. At the beginning, I would like to thank the ECES for inviting me to participate in this session, and I also thank Iman and the research team, and we need a lot in this phase. So we need to think of the history of such kind of model. Like for me in Egypt, I remember that the beginning of the 60s in the Planning Institute, when Dr. Ismail Sabri Abdallah and Dr. Hilmi Abdurrahman, and also a lot of work was done at that time. And then maybe 20 years later, that was the Egypt Project 2020. There was Dr. Ali Nassar, who also did another model. But if we look at the shift that took place in the last 60 years, we can imagine that there are a lot of changes, technological changes that took place, which is related to a lot of savings in the storage, the capacity of storage, so that of data. I cannot say that it will not be on a computer. I can even say that it's on a mobile. The storage capacity was not even available on a mainframe, and also the ability to do a lot of calculations in a very short time. I remember Dr. Ali Nassar at the beginning or the end of the 90s, when we was talking about his model, he would say that I have been for 3 weeks trying to operate the model, but now it's different. Also, there are other very complicated models that gives us more integrated and comprehensive picture of the economic situation. But at the same time, with all of these things, data are still scarce. And maybe in some cases, I cannot say like before, but sometimes in some sectors, they are less than before. So, which is very important, we have to think of the data, because as are the fruit that has to be reaped and has to be squeezed while it's fresh. Otherwise, that without parallel data, we will not be able to implement anything. And these models, if the data are not accurate and the estimates are sound and the definitions are adhered to, and not even at the national level, and also at the local level with certain details, they maybe become, there will be some assumptions that I'm not sure that the deviations that happen or the errors that happen, sometimes there will be a changeable, and sometimes, so we are lucky enough that this will not happen. But if the deviations in the data, maybe there will be a lot of deviations. These are generally marks on the use of models, or these like the work that we have seen. But we have to make sure that there are some elements. We have all the definitions and the measuring methodology has to be very clear, and also some definitions may be imported from models used in advanced countries, but when we try to apply it on developing countries, sometimes there will be a lot of differences, like for example taxes and this is mentioned in Piketty book, which is the difference or variations in income, and it was measured in many countries, but like in a country like Egypt, it cannot happen, because if we take the data of taxes, which are not may not be sufficient, it will not give us good results. The other point is just like how to politize the data, or to give a politics impression, even at the sectoral level and the sector of governed rates. The point here is that we have to be keen about is that the ability to fabricate data, or to change the data, and we can see it in all types of data in Egypt, and it's not methodological. Like fabricating data happens at the very local level, that in the population data, it's very important to know that the age of the mother, because if she has the first child while she was 18, it will be different from she was 25. So some data may not be indicated. So I was working on such data, and sometimes that in Egypt it was not indicated, like in 35% of the birth rates, we find that the age of the mother is not indicated or is not reported. So it's very local. So there isn't a decision that was issued and tell him to fabricate the data, or to just add any data, but everyone does whatever he wants. And here we have to think that this part is very important. The political economy of the statistics are very important. So there are indicators. There are many parties that may have some interest, that have a lot of very impacts, which is variable on the different all kinds of indicators. If we look at the technicalities, the CGE model, it links the data of households, but here there is a point, as a result of the difficulty of the model, it's ignored, which is the relation of the household to the community, and the relation of the community to the macroeconomy. And this not necessarily is not the same relation. It may not be the same relation from one place to another. And I'm talking about the difference from urban and rural, but even within the urban, the metropolitan is different from the small towns. So there are many assumptions in which we should depend on in these models, and they are not necessarily capture everything. And maybe here the idea of the transfers between among families. So because we need the columns to be the same, and these are mathematically well known, but the transfers that happen between families, not to mention the transfers that happens from abroad, which are not surveyed or are not well known at the family level, and even when calculating the GDP, which is the most important indicator, there are many residuals that can go into these calculations, and at the end we know what the residual is more and the non-residual is less. So there are many things that are approximate. The other point related to this story is the government expenditure and the transparency. And are there any institutions that are considered, if it's government or non-government, what is the role in the economy? And this is a very important point. In many points or in many relations, there should be linearity. We assume linearity, and sometimes linearity does not apply to everything. So these are one of the obstacles that face these models, and sometimes these are one of the problems. The other point, which is the final one also, is the interaction. So is it two ways or more? So if it's more than two ways, so and if I took non-linear formulas, the model will be very complicated, and it will be very difficult to understand it or explain it. And the last point is how to communicate the results to the policymakers and the non-specialized persons, because the nature of work is very technical. But how to communicate this so that, just like in the budget and planned committee in the parliament, is there a way that makes it easy that they understand these results, so that they will not overlook all the effort that was done as far as econometrics, and it should be very clear. And maybe this is a question for the research team. And thank you very much.
Good morning. I thank Dr. Abla, as she really had some important figure to have humanities as a background, and then to get to the CGE, a good combination. I also thank the authors about whatever is in the research so important. My comments, I have my slides in English, but I'll be speaking in Arabic. My comments goes in two ways. One, about using this intervention or a statistical and mathematical entry to take decisions, how to read this analysis, and some comments which are simple concerning the results or the conclusion of the proposal. The first thing that I want to mention, and I think that everyone knows that these models or examples are not sort of prediction about what will happen in the economy. These are some assumptions which is based on the fact that if we do something, whatever will happen. If we do something else, something different will happen. That's the basis of our assumptions. Using this in the decision making is related to three proposals in a research by Dralijan. First, to see the analysis, do they go with other economic analysis or no? There must be another analysis, whether an analysis based on other entries or intervention, but the consistency is important. There must be the fact that the model would give us a good understanding and the features of the structures and the constraints and the rigidity. All this has to get into the model, because I'm trying to put assumptions and deductions, so I have to understand the structure of the economy through this exercise, and also to give me an idea concerning the pros and the cons. But this is only theoretical, it's an idea. But on the flip side, and the disadvantage is that if the model is so complicated, if it is not the simplest way to find a solution, I think that is one of the negatives. If I use it in other objectives, regardless of my main objectives, or if I think of applying it on a wider scale, this is a problem. Concerning the black box in Rome concept is an important point. What are my factors for decision making? It's not random. The economic decisions they undertaken by President Sisi has nothing to do with this. Like, for example, the paying back the insurance debts and increase of income. All this has nothing to do with this. Another point is that to have a stand still to electricity rates or whatever. So how decisions are taken and the cost of the decision, which is referred to as the black box, this is not a forecast. Again, I want to assert and confirm this point. These are assumptions that would lead me to successive equilibrium. The most important thing is that the authors or the researchers should put all the assumptions in that they have used in the analysis. In our research, it's full of pluses. It's data driven, so the social accounting matrix took place before the policies undertaken. Yes, 2012 and 2013 was a chaotic period, so I don't know if that's a good baseline or not, but before the interventions and the entries. But there were a lot of problems back then. Of course, they're using the literature, that they expanded the scope of the dialogue concerning subsidies by putting in some information concerning taxes. And sometimes we tend to underestimate the importance of tax intervention and its impacts. I have only 3 slides to go. But what are the challenges and the impediments in the researchers? First, the question that really or what we say hovers over the research is the following. Can we take decisions which are political and moral through rights or for rights through a statistical model? This is a difficult question. Yes, we do need statistics and mathematics in order to have the probability of measuring impact, but at the very end these are political and moral and decisions. I think that there are 3 problems or problematic points. First, the context. The context of the research. We are speaking about an economy with a different structure and variable structure. It's not fixed, so comparing with other countries would not be of service to us. This is comparison between VAT and Vietnam, and the impact value analysis in Egypt, not very useful. How does the economic decision making taken and all the impacts? This is a very customized model for Egypt. I think that the research should have put forward or indulge into some of these contextual differences in a way which is more than the 2011 events and the Arab Spring cult. As to the research itself, the part of simulation or the descriptive part, apart from the tables, I think it would have been better or easier if we have the scenarios collected together. And the last slide, I haven't found it in the research, which are the limits and the scope. It would have been very good. But then I come back to the problem. What are we going to do with this model? And what are we going to do with this results in the framework or a certain frame? Dr. Data spoke about the nature of the data. I would skip that, of course. What about value or added value to the economy in Egypt? What are the sources of this? There are certain dimensions that are absent from the model. The informal economy is completely not there, and the postponed economy or deferred economy also is not there. This is unrealized, which are future economic results. And also it underestimated the care economy. So this model gives us an idea that the value, the sources of the value, it's coming from increasing the expenditure or removing the transfers and the rights and locating them in something different, and the impact. I have a quote, but I use it a lot. We are speaking about the efficiency of social expenditure. This efficacy or effectiveness is very difficult to decide on mathematics, faceless bureaucracy, because this has to do with people, humans. So I want to add my specialization that we need to start adding to the CG models some analysis which are political in nature and social in nature also, that would give me a good idea about the effect of simulation not only on the citizen and not only on the household but the country as a whole. So I have three suggestions here. Concerning the transfers and the results of the cash transfers, through the analysis, my question is, did they point out to the fact that there must be more effectiveness and efficacy for these item, which means that we expand it? No, they just want to put the savings in something different. But what is the social protection model that they are suggesting here? Okay, now we transferred or changed the cash transfer that would not lead us to a good saving probabilities, and we think that these savings would be better to be allocated to different things. But the question is that at any point of time we do need social protection network. So what is the social network protection they are suggesting? The second point is the universal basic income. Is the idea of giving transfers or base amount to everyone, would that solve the middle class problems? Number three, the impact value measurement as it reflects on the household is not really enough, because we need to measure the impact in a way that makes and give differences or consideration to men and women, youth and elders, because we do have certain structures. Less than 15 years are very important age segment. But this is again not a forecast, I confirm that. But the effect of these economic changes on children now, in the present, maybe that would be more important concerning welfare. This is very important to just get into something outside the scope of what is embedded in the research. Before Dr. Abeer takes over, thanks Dr. Ali, I just want to mention something very important. I officially ask you, and we have witnesses here. You mean for me to stop talking? No, that you make the anthropological analysis that would complete the model. You mentioned a lot important points. So these human rights and all these factors that you mentioned should get into, or are trying to get into, a mathematical model. The problem is the mathematical model tries to get very close to reality in the assumption and the parameters. They try their best to do that. However, at the very end, that's only a guideline. Nobody says that this is one whole model for policy implications in a direct way. So I'm asking you officially, please continue on that point. Please go on with this, because this is good. Decisions are taken in a certain way. We had a course about cost-benefit analysis of the public policy here in the center. General policy should have a cost-benefit analysis. It just doesn't come random, which sometimes, is not the ideal way, definitely. Let's see who are on the beneficiaries or the losers. That's important. Good morning, everyone. I have a few brief comments as to the simulation. I don't understand actually why did you why did you simulate the effect of the VAT with energy substance, not with food substance or the like? So what happened actually is that they remove some part of the IG subsidies and the food subsidies, and then they implemented the VAT. I think based on that, so the VAT should be implemented with both of them. Why are you implementing the VAT just on one dimension? It's not clear. Why did you choose the simulation that way? Number two, the paper really needs a story, as some you're saying the VAT and you're saying removing subsidies and contractual, and as some sectors are contracted and certain sectors are expanded, there should be a story to narrate why these special sectors are contracted or expanded. That would have been also good. We want to understand why the exports fell. Why? Consumption. Why did investment increase? We have to know the reasons behind these increases, or we have to not, it's not enough to mention these fluctuations, but it's important to know the factors behind the fluctuations. It's really important here. We also want to know, when you implemented the cash transfers, the contractual effect, we want to know which is attributed to the subsidies or removing of the subsidies. Was it reduced? Did it come down or not? The cash transfer, was it effective in mitigating the contractual effect of some other factors or no? لا تستطيعين المقارنة بين نتائج هذه الورقة أو هذا البحث مع أبحاث السيد شناوي، لأن طبعا هذه النماذج ليست هي ثابتة أو ليست ثابتة، بينما المثال لديك هو ثابت. ليس واضحا أيضا موقف الحكومة من التعليم والصحة. هل قمت بوضع كل هذه المصروفات، أخذها من مصادر الحكومة ثم وضعها في منافذ أخرى، أم كان هذا نوع من محايدة أو الحياد في الميزانية؟ لأنك لو تحكمت في هذا أو قمت بتغيير هذا البعد سيتغير أو ستتغير أبعاد خاصة بالأسر. This paper was also made or put forward after a lot of policies were applied. أعتقد أن من أجل أن يكون النموذج حي، فإنك في حاجة أن تقارني النتائج بالواقع من أجل الوصول إلى ما إذا كان النموذج يعمل على التنبؤات بما هو سيحدث أم لا. I just want to give a chance to I want the answers, and then we open the floor for questions and answers. We need answers. What of the accusations directed to me in this issue? Of course, I thank you for all the comments. I'll just answer some of the points. As Dr. Hania, I thank you that you give us a different perspective. Yes, we always think in terms of numbers, figures, and that's what our mindset is. But in your intervention, thanks, because you've introduced certain dimensions. You have it, you look into with a different dimension. As to comparing this with other researchers, this is very important. It's very important to get into the informal economy and certain social dimensions that you highlighted, and that's very important. I look into that and how to integrate that. Also, you pointed to a very important dimension that the model doesn't give us forecast. I can't say that this will be what takes place in reality. But as I said in the last night, we just put scenarios for winners and losers. What if this happened? What if that happens? And based on that, there will be indications of whether we are going to build our decision making mentioned by Dr. Magued, or maybe we reach a way to reach a decision based on these figures, or find a way to work out these figures. And I think this is a big, major question that lies. Maybe I can't give answers, but I think that we have, introduced the limitations of the model. It's important to know what are our limitations, because no model is complete. The most important thing is to explain our results in the scope of the limitations. I think that's one point that we can work on and improve in the paper. And as to the point of intergenerational CGE models, I'm sure Dr. Abeer knows more about that point. But I think this is present. Maybe this would be measurements to the demographics idea that you mentioned. I don't know if that could be good. As to universal basic income, in July, we have, in June, sorry, we do have a mixed message to be financed from the alleviation of subsidies and progressive taxes, where we will raise other taxes. So I think that this will be the subject of next research in June. Dr. Abeer, I thank you again concerning the value-added taxes point, because when we put our scenarios, we really had some problems. There was difficulty for us to put a lot of dimensions in the same scenario, so we couldn't consequently track the impact and then get trapped in this black box thing. So as you said, we have to put a lot of things together so that we will be able to reflect results. That's why the value added tax was put with the subsidies alleviation in 2015-2016 in order to see snapshots of the impact measurement or the value measurement. This also we need improvement. As to the dimensions that we didn't explain in details, the CGE models give us a lot of results. In my paper, I couldn't speak about trade aspect. Maybe I look into the probability that if we can put more or remove it, if we can't give enough explanation. I really wanted to look from the angle of social protection or social safety, so we do need your input and guidance. Comparing the results to other papers like Shennawy's research, this is very important. We are going to put this into consideration. And the CGE models usage in Egypt were not so much. We wanted to know where we stand among these modern researchers in Egypt. As to comparing this with the real world, yes, you're right. It doesn't give us the predictions, but we try to add this. We also see that financing the cash transfer out of the money of the subsidies, we assume yes, we do have a virtual assumption that all this money will be getting back to all these segments of society or sources. I have comments concerning two things. Dr. Hania was explaining whether 2012 or 2013 were that a baseline, because it was a chaotic time in Egypt's history, so it's important we start with that. And what about the potential protection? This is a big question. Cash transfers, yes, we need it, but alone, it's not on its own. It's not enough to measure the impacts compared to this contractual or other dimensions. But anyhow, of course, thank you for the comments.